All right, let's call the meeting to order. It is February 8th at 7:05. Thank you guys for all coming and joining us. Kay, could you do roll call, please?
Jay Engstrom,
Here.
Nicholas DeFrank,
Virtually here.
Jeff Davlin,
Here.
Nick Missione,
Here.
Kim McGee is absent. Jarrett Mork.
Here.
Jess Robeson.
Here.
Cindy Saplesio.
Here.
All right, look at that. Got good attendance tonight.
House.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess we just have a couple little items here. First, we just have to take care of the minutes from the January 11th meeting. Do any of the commissioners have any questions regarding those minutes? Thank you, staff, for putting it together.
Yeah.
As always.
Thank you, Kay.
No comments. I would entertain a
To
motion.
approve the minutes?
I'll second.
Jared made the motion and Jess seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is public comment for persons not on the agenda. So we'll be talking about 111 Main Street later on, but if you have any items that you want to present to the commissioners that is not regarding that project, if you could step up to the podium or raise your hand online, that'd be awesome. And doesn't look like anybody is stepping up to the plate. So with that, we can just move on to the next item, which is gonna be the 111 Main Street Food Truck Court. I chatted with Jared a little bit about this before. We're gonna kind of mix it up a little bit just to make the discussion a little more comprehensive. Jared's gonna introduce it, and then the applicant is going to talk through the project, and then Jared's actually gonna talk again, just more discussing kind of the conclusion that staff came to. Then we can ask staff questions, and then we can ask the applicant questions. And then, of course, then the public has their say as well. So with that, Jared?
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So yeah, I thought that would be somewhat appropriate given kind of the complex nature of some of this application, having a lot of components. And I didn't want to be redundant with the applicant going through and presenting the design. So as you guys saw in the staff report, there are a number of applications that make up this combined application. An annexation, a rezoning, an administrative site plan review, an alternative compliance request, a subdivision exemption, and a conditional use permit. The annexation portion of this is the most highly regulated portion of it. So the state requires annexations to meet a whole host of requirements to be annexed into a community, and has a very regulated process that a town needs to follow in order to consider annexations. And so before tonight's meeting, that process kind of kicked off with the Board of Trustees reviewing the annexation petition, and that occurred at their first January meeting. They ultimately approved at that meeting Resolution 3, Series of 2024, which we've included in your guys' packet tonight as Attachment G. That resolution essentially found that the annexation petition substantially met the state and town's requirements, and that the property to be annexed or proposed to be annexed is eligible to be considered for annexation. It did not annex the parcel. It did not compel the town to annex the parcel. It just said that this could be considered after the application goes through a standard municipal land use hearing. So that resolution also initiated this land use process, and it set a statutorily required public hearing before the Board of Trustees on February 27th, which is between 30 and 60 days after the resolution was passed. And so we understand that that is a very near-term date. But that hearing before the Board of Trustees can and likely will be continued to allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to review the application, follow our land use procedures, and then once the Planning and Zoning Commission come to a recommendation, properly notice for that Board of Trustees meeting. So currently, applicant and the staff have identified that Board of Trustees hearing to be continued from February 27th to March 26th. So just wanted to kind of let you know that. In addition, because the annexation is highly regulated, we have a lot of public noticing requirements for that. And so if you read the public notice section of the Soper Sun, you'll see that this property has been noticed darn near every week for the last 4 weeks. And one notice was for tonight's meeting, and then 4 consecutive notices are required at a minimum for that BOT hearing. And so that's why you've seen this publicly noticed in the paper numerous times. So again, that resolution did not annex the property, and it did not commit the town to annexing. This process will inform whether should be annexed into the town. So just kind of wanted to lay that out. In addition, the application has a couple different review processes because the application is proposing to rezone to HCC. There was a courtesy historic preservation review that occurred last Thursday on the 1st. And we've included in the staff memo kind of summary of those comments. So from a process to date standpoint, those are kind of the public hearings that have occurred or the hearings that have occurred on this property and kind of where we're at. I'll be happy to get into the application, the phasing, all the components of the application after Bob does a presentation, but I figured I'd let him kind of present the application to you all and their proposal.
Perfect. Thanks, Jared.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commission, for giving us some time tonight. Very happy to be here. We've been at this for a while, and this is a big threshold for this particular project.
Sorry, Bob. Sorry to interrupt. Can you turn on your mic?
How's that?
And perhaps your camera too, that would be possible.
I'm just casting the slides.
You're not seeing my screen?
I see your screen.
I don't think he can share his screen and also his camera at the same time.
You get to
Got
see
it.
the back of his head.
Thanks. Yeah, but I just see the back of his head, which is, we'll deal. Thanks.
So I'm joined by Rich Camp and Catherine Camp and Terrence McGuire. They're the owners of the property. Some of you may know Terrence from Johnny McGuire's up in Aspen for many years, and they are the owners of the property. We also have Paul Southworth on Zoom. He is the project engineer from River City Consultants, and he'll be able to answer any engineering questions that we are not ready for that Jay may have for us.
Never.
Some of you may be familiar with food trucks. Some of you may have been to a food truck park. Some of them may not be familiar. There's a couple out on 133 that you may have seen from time to time. And a food truck park is a collection of food trucks together to try and create some synergies. And there's a various ways to do it and various levels of public improvements and facilities that go with it. A lot of people here are familiar with the one in Moab. That's the picture in the center. The Quesadilla Mobilla is the kind of famous food truck that's over there for you who are bikers. And on the right, there's one from downtown Lyons on the main drag there through Lyons. And it is more in the scale of what this one would be. There's 3, sometimes 4 facilities and some outdoor dining. They don't have indoor dining there. And then the one on the bottom left, I was just at a couple of weeks ago in Miramar, Puerto Rico, that we stumbled upon. And so that's kind of what it is. What's distinctive about this one is there's indoor dining and real restrooms rather than porta potties. There is a commissary there for safe food preparation. And some jurisdictions have developed codes specific to food trucks. In Carbondale, we treat them as a conditional use, and they live with the rules that go with conditional uses. So that's one of the things that's on your list for this application. In terms of where, as you're coming in from Catherine Store Road, the first building on the right is a white stucco house. And the red box there is the lot that's part of the town grid that is been a part of the town since the town was created. To the right or east of that, you see kind of a funny shaped property bounded by the Rio Grande Trail rail corridor and the Main Street. That's a collection of properties that go with this property but have not been incorporated into the property. So one of the requests is to include those, and it's not within the town of Carbondale, strangely enough. And so that's the annexation. There's about 1,700 feet and change. So a very small amount of property. This room is probably 1,100 square feet or something, to give you some sense of the size of the annexation that we're talking about. This is a survey of the property. So you see 2 lines that are going north to south. Those are old town lots. And then you see on the right, there's kind of a diagonal dash line. And the north, or the upper part of the diagonal dash line, the previous property owners did a land swap with RAFTA to clean up some issues around the rail corridor. And so they acquired it through that. And then the triangle down at the bottom, came out of the Darien estate when the last of that clan passed away. Neither one of those was created through a subdivision process. So they're just sort of little orphan properties. And by doing the subdivision exemption, we put it all into one piece of property, and it cleans up that situation. This is not today because there's snow out there, but in general, the existing conditions, the view on the left is standing on Main Street looking towards the house. And the view on the right is if you're coming in from Catherine Store Road, the way that you see it. You see a little bit of a retaining wall there. There have been instances in the past where people have reported cars sliding into this property. Over time, the town has put some boulders out there to reduce the likelihood of that happening. And it looks like maybe they put a little retaining wall up there at some point to support that. This is what the house looked like in the 70s. And so at some point there's a miner's cabin in there somewhere. And at some point somebody added a porch to the front. And it looks like about this time they started enclosing that porch to have a little more living space. The plan that we're doing is probably more of a nod to what it looked like in the 70s. So we're going to bring back some windows and light in the front compared to what you see out there today. Interesting note, some of you know Stacy Patch Burnett. She spent a little time here when she was a young girl living here. Most recently, it was a travel agency. I've had a couple of friends that worked in there with the former owners. They had a boutique travel agency. So we talked about what it was and what it is. This is what we propose it to be. So this is a plan view looking down on the property. The house is the house, and so the goal is really to try and save that house rather than tear it down and repurpose the space. So you get a small bar and a little bit of dining area, a new restroom that's ADA accessible, some commissary space for food prep, and then a deck off of the east side of the property. And this is phase one. So one of the things Jared mentioned was a phasing plan. When we originally submitted 7 or 8 months ago, we had a full build out plan, and then that went to pricing with contractors. And then we realized we needed a phasing plan to prove the concept before the next set of investment occurred. So this is a little bit smaller. There are 3 trucks in this scenario. We'll use trucks, but it could be a food trailer. Some of you have seen trailers like the one behind Catherine's store. It could be a cart. You may have seen there's a donut person around that has a little cart, or it could be a food truck. They're interchangeable in terms of when I use that phrase, what we mean. So this is the first phase of improvements. So there's some grading to level out a spot for the trucks. There's a deck that is constructed for when the weather's nice, dining outside. And then there's a repurposing of the existing structure to make it into something that can be used as a dining area. There's a curb cut proposed. You can see on the right hand side of the drawing. And that's where the food trucks would come in and out into the site. And those are the only vehicles that would be coming in and out of there. Staff identified early on a concern about how often that was happening and during what hours. So we did a little informal traffic study and came up with some hours. And we think they'll work, but I think staff has proposed a very logical condition of approval that if they don't, then we have to get together and change them. And that certainly makes a lot of sense to us as well. There's some ADA access and bike parking in the plan that occurs within the town right away. You see that around town. It's not an uncommon situation, but we do need to get the town's permission for that. So while there are some regulatory things that are somewhat can seem complicated, the plan itself is pretty simple. It's how do you try and reuse this building? So the packet includes views of all 4 sides, but I'm really going to focus on the view from Main Street and from coming in from Catherine's store, since those are the things that most people are going to see. On the front, you see the windows return back towards that look from the 70s. There's a little gable that is a change from the current roof line to create a sense of entry on the front. There's the deck on the east side of the existing house. That is uncovered in phase 1. There may be some, what do they call those sails?
Shades.
Yeah, some kind of, or there could be umbrellas or something, but it's not a real structure up above it. And then you see the view from the east side. So there is a garage door type structure on that side, and that allows it to open up during the summertime. So you can have indoor, outdoor kind of effect, and that could be really fun, I think. And then there's a walk-in cooler on the back side of the existing structure. As you were coming in from Catherine's store, you would see some trucks that would partially block this view, but I wanted you to see, what the building proposal are. There's also lap siding. Most of the stucco goes away. If you remember the picture from the 70s, there was lap siding on there, and so it's a little. We think it's a nod to what once was. And then phase 2. So if the concept works the way we hope, then the dining facility gets bigger because we're able to move some things out back and build an addition on the rear of it. There are some new restrooms, and there's a commissary for food trucks. One of the things that Garfield County Public Health appreciates about this idea is that commissaries are great for food safety for people who are selling out of their truck or trailer or whatever, whether they're here or somewhere else, they would have the opportunity to have a clean, safe space to prepare their food. There's also the opportunity to add an additional vehicle on the site once it gets bigger. And that is the biggest change. There's some landscaping and things like that, but in terms of the nuts and bolts, the new bathrooms, the new commissary, and the enlarged space for more people to be able to dine and store indoors are the big ticket items. There's also a permanent cover that goes over the deck at this point, so some sort of a roof structure so that we can extend the season as much as possible. This is sort of a recap. One of the things that our alternative compliance request is, as you're aware, the code for HCC wants a 14-foot ceiling. We think that would make the little building that's there look pretty odd and not very reflective of the minor shack that's in the midst of this. And it also saves money for the owners in the first phase. In the second phase, it goes up some, but it never gets up to 14 feet. Once it's torn apart, we can take the ceiling and put a hole in it and see if there's the ability to do a cathedral in phase one. But a lot of you have probably been around old buildings and you don't really know what you have until you expose it, and then you can determine whether you can do something or not. So this is when things happen. Anything that's not done within 5 years, we're proposing it goes away. So if an improvement isn't completed in 5 years, then you got to go back to square one for a site review. So it's use it or lose it. Even though it's pretty straightforward, there are a bunch of things that we are applying to do, and here's the overall list of them. Some of these would normally be administrative, but Jared has chosen to bundle it all together and have everybody look at it. So like the subdivision exemption, you would usually be the final authority on, but it's going to go to the trustees. The annexation is primarily a trustee issue. The conditional use and the site review would normally be an administrative decision, but we're going to touch all the bases during this process. So we'll start with the zoning. Over the last 20 years or so, the town has had a pretty consistent direction for the first block of Main Street. And the direction has been to rezone it to historic commercial core. And ironically, the original town core was about 2nd and Main. And there was a big fire, and Mr. Dinkle put a building down at 4th Street, and that became the center of town after the fire. But originally, it was at 2nd and Main. This is from the comp plan. Going back at least to 2013, I didn't go back to the 1993. It may have been in there as well. Designated the first block of Main Street as downtown. In 2014, the town rezoned the south side of Main Street to HCC. And then in 2022, the comp plan affirmed the downtown designation. And then last year, you all, I think this might be a typo. I think it was 23, not 22. The Clay Center and the Dandelion Inn were rezoned to HCC. I apologize for that. Over time, I expect that all the properties along here will rezone. Some of them have existing non-conforming uses, so they probably won't rezone until they decide they want to do a different use than what's there today. So in addition to meeting the town's goals and direction for the 100 block of Main Street. There are technical things that need to be addressed. And one of them relates to the lot depth. It's a non-conforming lot today because of the rail corridor that cuts through there. And there's nothing we can do to add depth to the lot. It's got the rail corridor on one side and Main Street on the other. So it would continue to be a non-conforming lot. It doesn't get any more non-conforming, but it doesn't get less non-conforming as we're moving forward. It's not 100 feet deep. Second, like all HCC properties, it's not required to provide parking for commercial uses. There's no residential uses proposed, so there is no parking requirement. Parking is a constant topic of conversation, and so this to be successful, we have to be able to attract people on foot and on bike, and people who are willing to park in the town parking lot and walk 1,000 feet down the rail corridor to this site. If we can't get people to do this, then it won't work. It's just as simple as that. And so we think that it can, and the owners are willing to bet their money on that. As far as the subdivision exemption goes, this isn't truly a subdivision because we're actually combining rather than subdividing, but this is the process that allows us to do that. And it takes those sort of orphan parcels and lumps them all in together and cleans up that little bit. And along with the annexation, most people that you would ask would think that this was already in the town. And I was surprised when I first learned that it wasn't. So we have a mini annexation, 1,731 square feet of land that we're asking to bring into the town. And we think it's consistent with the town's direction. And I think it gives Carbondale the ability to control the future of that portion of the entrance into Carbondale. I think that's a good thing. The town policies for annexation mostly anticipate much larger properties than, was it 4/100ths of an acre or something like that. So we don't have a whole lot of sexy things to offer for annexation. We do generate some sales tax and some property tax, and we're offering a voluntary real estate transfer assessment on future sales. That's I think the best we can do with 1,700 square feet. On regards to the conditional use, it's kind of where mobile vendors fit into our code. And if you read that section of the code, you can tell that a lot of it was generated by door-to-door salespersons. And they didn't want people knocking on people's door at 6:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock, or in this case, after 11:30 at night. And all of the vendors need to be licensed and by the town. It has a permit process, and then Department of Health. We think that it's consistent with the uses envisioned for this area currently and over time, that there's been a lot of talk about trying to increase the foot traffic and vitality in this part of Main Street. And the Clay Center is currently going through a master planning process for their property. And I think you could see a future in which there's more activity on this end of Main Street in a way that people would enjoy. In terms of the site review, normally with less than 5,000 square feet, it's an administrative, but as I mentioned, we're bundling it all together and taking everything to everybody. And we had a good meeting with HPC. Nick can probably comment on that if desired. We heard individuals' ideas, but I think the consensus was that they supported the idea of repurposing this building rather than taking it down and starting from scratch. And with the exception of the interior ceiling height not being 14 feet, we think that we are consistent with the site review criteria. just for your information, the ceiling is currently 7 feet 6 inches. So we would very much like to see if we can do some cathedral effect in there if it will allow. If not, some of you remember Sheffy's, which is now Heather's, that pretty tight in their dining room. As we previously discussed, the truck rotations were an issue that staff brought up early, so we tried to address that. Some of you who have lived here long enough may remember that the train used to close that intersection, and it was pretty regular occurrence as they went to the load out and load up coal. Not as an aside, not long before the mines closed, I was in town one day trying to get out, and they had a train that was so long that it blocked 133 and Catherine Store. It was pretty wild. Once again, we're comfortable with the 5 years, use it or lose it, and if we can't get it together by then we have to start over and apply under the code that's in effect at 5 years. We think that's a reasonable requirement, and we think it can be fun, and that people on the trail will enjoy it, and that a lot of the bike riders from around the valley that bike into the area would like to stop here and spend some money, and we'd like to help them do that. So that's it. I thank you all. I hope you'll support this idea. I think it's a fun thing, and we'll be here to answer any questions or try and address any concerns that come up. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Bob. Jared, you wanna?
Yeah, thanks. I figured Bob could explain the components of the project and the design of the building a bit better. So, kind of circling back, as Bob discussed numerous times, there's 2 phases of the project, right? Phase 1 is something that is the applicant's intending to do really upon approval. Phase 2 is a future state. And so when reviewing this application, and before you get there, as Bob alluded to, they are requesting a 5-year approval lapsing period. So the code currently is a 2-year approval lapsing period for site plans. They're requesting to extend that. And so as you're reviewing this application, you really need to review it under 2 lenses. The first being phase 1 and what the applicant is committing to, and making sure that that is compliant with all the codes, that is acceptable for the annexation, conditional use permit, subdivision exemption, really all of the initial applications. And then also look through it under the lens of the phase 2 improvements and ensuring that those also comply. But there is no commitment that phase 2 is going to happen. And so, it's really important to keep in mind that phase 1 may be the only phase that ever happens of this development plan. So, wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that. As Bob alluded to, the HPC did review this, and Nick, Michonne, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it did seem like there was overwhelming support for both phases of the application. There were some conversations about window choice, casement versus double hung, looking at different fencing materials along Main Street to create a softer, more approachable feel than the chain link. And then there was a lot of encouragement to engage with the Rio Grande Trail. We did receive a series of referral comments, which were included, and staff does support all of those referral comments, one of which was RAFTA, which said they need to be consulted, involved in any use and engagement with Rio Grande Trail, and we certainly support that. When looking at the comprehensive plan, the application or the annexation parcel is located in town periphery, and there's a section of the town periphery that discusses kind of all those areas and really breaks areas up into 2 main categories, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 are those areas that are really already function as part of town. Some of them are in holding, some of them are immediately adjacent, and to the naked eye, most people don't know that they aren't a part of town. And so this property is located in phase 1. And phase one is really recommends annexation and recommends keeping that compact, walkable, pedestrian-oriented footprint of town. And so when looking at the comprehensive plan, staff does find that the proposed project supports most of the goals, policies, and intent of the comp plan. And certainly the reuse of, in addition to an older structure, supported by the downtown area's desire for preservation and architectural variety. And so we think it ticks a lot of those boxes. With regards to the annexation, one of the key components of annexations is an accompanying master plan or development plan. And so part of the reason for all of these applications being combined and referred up is that in order to approve an annexation, you need to approve that accompanying master plan. And the annexation only takes effect upon kind of execution of that master plan. And so looking at that, at the annexation kind of requirements of the comprehensive plan, staff found that the application really met each one of those criteria. One criteria that came up is what the comprehensive plan calls a valuable asset. And in layman's term, that's kind of a public benefit, if you will. And so the comp plan talks about three key categories: trails, open space parks and land conservation, and affordable and attainable housing. And when looking at those, we do agree with the applicant that the housing category is probably the most applicable for this annexation. And given that the proposed development plan doesn't envision any housing, and it is a relatively small mini or micro annexation, staff does feel that the proposed voluntary transfer assessment, real estate transfer assessment, is a appropriate way to kind of meet the intent of affordable, attainable housing. And what the applicant is proposing, 1%, is consistent with some of our other annexation policies for community housing mitigation in the community housing plan and other documents. One thing staff does recommend is that 1% apply not only to future sales, but also to the current owner's initial purchase of this property. So that both the purchase and future sales are providing benefits to the town and achieving our housing goals. Generally speaking, when reviewing the application, we didn't find that any public infrastructure was going to be degraded by this proposed development plan. And so again, we felt it really met all of the annexation requirements. I do think that it is appropriate for this body to consider the annexation benefit and provide a recommendation to the trustees on whether you think the value is commensurate with what's being asked, and that will help the town achieve kind of the goals and intent of the comprehensive plan. As far as the zoning goes, staff does support the proposed commercial use and the HCC zoning. As Bob stated, it does continue that transition of the north side of the 100 block of Main Street to the HCC zone district. And so we wouldn't view this as spot zoning or any of those other issues. We find it very compatible with the surrounding uses, the surrounding zonings, and really the intent of Main Street. One thing that the HCC zone district does discuss is a desire for customer-oriented commercial uses on the street level, but also a vertical mix of uses. And so one thing we did highlight in our staff report is that this is a single-use building. And so it doesn't necessarily align with those multi-use desires of the HCC zone district. With that said, the size of this parcel the requirement of some of those other uses to provide parking could make development of residential uses on site difficult. Site access alone could be very challenging. And so, we do support the rezoning request while understanding that the parking is not required for commercial uses. And so that parking burden is really placed back on the public right of way. When kind of looking throughout the downtown core, the applicant's desire to promote bicycle and walking access, we do feel that overall the downtown core and some of the larger town lots can support the increased parking demand that this commercial use would require. Overall, the site plan meets the UDC. A couple areas that we identified and recommended changes for were first with utilities. As you saw in the staff report, the applicant is proposing to replace the water line in phase one, but not necessarily proposing to replace the existing sanitary sewer line in phase one that's currently cutting across the Clay Center's property, the property to the west. And staff does recommend kind of accelerating that utility improvement, replacing the sewer line in phase one as demonstrated in phase two. Grading on the site, staff did provide some recommendations. It seems like there's some discrepancy in the locations of some of the dry wells and piping. And staff does feel that having those improvements more aligned between the two phases could help with reducing the amount of site work necessary in phase two and allowing for phase two to occur at maybe a lower cost at that time. I think Bob really discussed kind of the nonconformity issue of the lot depth. We agree overall the lot depth does not conform. In fact, it doesn't conform to any commercial zone district that the town of Carbondale has. We require 100-foot lot depth for all commercial zone districts. And so there really is no way for this parcel to comply with lot depth. And so we do find it's appropriate to acknowledge that the property is a non-conforming lot. With that, the UDC does state that additions can occur on non-conforming lots, but are required to be approved with a conditional use permit. And so we do recommend that the conditional use permit include a acknowledgement of that, so that both phase one and phase two, if approved, are allowed to proceed within that 5-year timeline. As far as streetscape landscaping goes, phase two proposes 2 trees in the public right of way. At this time, there isn't a lot of detail on what those are. And so we would recommend that a revised landscape plan be provided to the town, reviewed by the town arborist prior to phase two being submitted for a building permit. Again, fencing, we do support the HPC's recommendation to use a softer fencing material. They recommended something like cedar fencing. We do think that would be appropriate along the deck and along the main street frontage and provide a nicer look along Main Street. We are also recommending a condition of the conditional use permit to address the potential concerns with site access. I think from a staff's perspective, Main Street is relatively busy right now, and for a food truck to access this site, it would have to stop in the lane of travel, potentially both lanes of travel, and back into the site. That could cause issues at certain times of the day. And so, we're open to considering the times recommended by the applicant, but also if we're noticing some operational difficulties along Main Street, we'd appreciate the ability to work with the applicant to fine tune those times to try to reduce those to the greatest degree possible. Lastly, we noticed the gate along Main Street, as demonstrated, could block the sidewalk when opened. And so we're just recommending that that gate be installed in a way that it can either slide, rotate 180 degrees, but not block pedestrian access along Main Street when open. Staff, we agree with the applicant that we think the Rio Grande Trail will be a major corridor to access this property. And with that, we encourage them to work with RAFTA. Can't require it, but we do think engaging with that corridor and allowing that pedestrian access kind of to the north and interacting with the Rio would be a benefit to the town as a whole. So we're certainly encouraging that. And we also support the floor to floor, 14-foot floor to floor height alternative compliance request. The HPC did review this, and they did find that the existing pedestrian scale of the building and preserving the historical architecture is a greater benefit than just raising the roof to require 14-foot compliance. And so we do think it's a better alternative design than what would be achieved through the code. With regards to parking, again, we understand commercial uses aren't required to park their off-street requirements on site. That will be a burden. The applicant is proposing 10 bicycle parking spaces. We do feel that that should be the minimum required, and whether that's permitted in the right of way or if it's not permitted in the right of way, that should be provided on site to ensure that bicycle access is encouraged and convenient. With regards to the conditional use permit, as I kind of discussed throughout, it's really necessary for the mobile vendor portion of this, which is really consistent with food trucks. And we're proposing essentially 3 conditions as a part of that conditional use. First, any adjustments to site access, timing, if we're finding operational difficulties with traffic flows along Main Street. Second, any mobile vendor operating on the premise is still required to receive a mobile vendor license from the town and any Garfield County health or other state health permits necessary. And then a third, that acknowledgement that the conditional use permit is addressing the non-conforming regulations of the UDC, and that portion of the conditional use permit is only good for that 5-year approval lapsing period as requested. After that, they would have to come back and receive a conditional use permit in conjunction with any future development. So overall, we find that the application does meet the town's annexation policy, the comp plan, the UDC, and we support the application. So we've prepared a recommended motion with 20-ish conditions of approval and findings for each of the various applications. And so, I know either of us are happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Again, this is a public hearing, so before getting into commissioner comment, we'd love to have the public hearing open. Lastly, I just remembered for Nick and Nick online, I passed out a public comment that was received after the packet went out. I've also emailed it to both of you guys. So that is the only public comment that we've received in the written form or through phone calls to us. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Actually, just one thing I wanted to kind of add before we open it up to questions for you guys, just for kind of clarity on because we're bundling a lot of different things all into one right now. And so maybe just for everybody in here that might not understand all these different parts that we're doing, I just want to mention that we're dealing with 3 different lots, correct? And so one of the lots is within the town and the other 2 are not. So what we have to do is we have to annex 2 of those lots to then, and so if we were to kind of break this up into a bunch of different meetings, the first one would be to annex those properties so that we have all these properties within the town of Carbondale. Then the next would be the subdivision compilation to where all those would then become one lot. And those would all be under CT zoning, what the current lot is. Then the applicant is looking to transition from CT to HCC, which is what the town recommends for this area. And then after that, then they would be applying for the site plan, and the ingrained in that would be the conditional use. Is that step by step kind of how this would go if it was panned out a little bit more?
Yes, and the alternative compliance with the site plan. Correct.
Oh, right, that too.
Yes, that's a good summary.
Yeah, so just to help anybody in here who did not understand all the jargon that we've been talking about. But with that, I guess, do we have any questions I guess we can do questions for staff and the applicant all at once, if that works? I know, right? That's kind of how it ends up. What was that? We'll have questions for staff and the applicant first, and then we open it up to public comment. And, oh, thanks, Kay. I was gonna ask you if you could pull up Nick and Nick again. Careful.
Hey, do you want me to stop sharing?
Sure. Unless people want to ask questions.
Let's see, I guess, do we want to go around the room, or does anybody want to volunteer for stepping up first? Jeff, do you want to start? Put you on the spot?
Before I did. Yeah, I'll start with one question about the pedestrian access to the Rio Trail. Have you guys thought about how that fits in to the phase 1 backyard, or what that connection might look like, how it might operate?
There's a process that you go through with RAFTA, and it's a substantial commitment of time and resources. And so there will be a time and a place for that, but no, we haven't drawn up. We have some ideas, but we haven't done the engineering or any of the calculations that would be done that you have to submit to Farnsworth and the RAFTA's engineers and everyone else that looks at it on their behalf. It would be great to have one someday, but it's nothing that we could do in the near term.
On that point though, Bob, I think it's a good question, Jeff. Would it be possible to just have, say, a cut in the wall and a sequence of stairs coming into the property without extending into RAFTA's right of way, thus bypassing the RAFTA process, but still providing access into and out to the Rio?
We would prefer to go through RAFTA's process. We would want to respect their desire to control access to the corridor. If somebody finds some way to get through there, like they do on other properties, that's something that we wouldn't be able to control. But when we do try and do a formal access, we would want to go through their process.
Mhm. Jerry, you have any questions for staff or the applicant?
I do. It's saying in here that there's a 5-year lapse according to our UDC. Is that modified at all? What I'm seeing in our code is 3 years and,
So site plans are for 2 years.
yeah.
And so they're requesting that site plan more specifically for phase 2 is extended out to 5 years to give them a little more wiggle room to prove concept and, you know, let cost of construction come down.
Or the income to go up.
And then I did have another one in here as well.
I got one more. In terms of site access and the gate on Main Street. Seems like the sliding gate is a good idea and easily accomplished. Do you anticipate a lot of turnover with the vendors? Like how often would the lineup kind of rotate? Or, I mean, is there any idea how frequent that site access for new trucks or trailers would be required? And especially for the back of the house trailer to be, is there even the ability to remove the back trailer without moving the front two trucks or trailers?
So
yeah.
Terrence, after Johnny McGuire's closed, became a mobile food vendor. And so one of the one that you're speaking to, we anticipate will be owned by the owners and operated. So that one would be,
It's like
unless it just
semi-permanent.
totally tanks, it would stay there.
Yeah.
The others, you know, it wouldn't be daily, but the idea is to keep a fresh mix and to try out some things and find what really works, both for the mobile vendor and for the site. And so there would be some turnover, maybe, I don't know, every couple of days. There's probably going to be days where there's only a couple there. And then on the weekends, there might be all three.
I see.
And so, you know, we're going to have to see how it works. And, you know, Kevin has been pretty straightforward, Shoresman, the Public Works Director, about his concern, and we'll watch it together. And if we need to make changes to make it earlier in the morning or later in midday, we'll make those changes.
Jared, you find that question?
Did, it seems that, parking is always a conversation piece in just about every one of our applications. And I think also most recently, traffic studies were a big thing, and we had people do their own traffic studies, and after formal traffic studies were implemented, a lot of that information that they presented kind of changed a little bit. Given the location of this in your own personal experience of, you know, a train cutting off both sides of town, you know, and I think everybody in this town knows exactly how busy that area is. Why was a formal traffic study not really provided or taken into account? I think given its location and its use, I think that's something that needs to be presented to at least the Board of Trustees as far as.
Yeah, this is sort of the thesis of the downtown core, has been that it's shared parking, and the town made a big investment right across the street into that parking lot, and someday it'll probably have a structure on it like the one that's in Glenwood down by the library there. As the town evolves, small town parking is something that I could talk about until you made me leave. But in general, what happens is first phase is people park right in front of their business, their employees park in front of their business, and Main Street is a mix of customers and employees. As parking gets tighter, you either enforce 2-hour limits or you work with employers to get their employees and owners to use the town lot. And that creates more space for customers on Main Street. And then the next phase after that is you start looking at parking districts, parking structures, doing a more aggressive parking control program. The opposite of that is to say we missed the boat on HCC zoning, and it was a mistake. And we're going to go to requiring it. The market likes 133 because everybody can park and see the front door. And that's the thesis of what you get on Highway 133. And that's an attraction for business. That's something that makes it easy for you to put a business out on 133 compared to downtown. Downtown has higher land costs. So for years, we've pushed through no particular desire, but just the market pushed uses out to 133. And so one of the few tools the towns has had to try and incentivize businesses to locate downtown has been this waiver on parking requirement. If collectively, we could all decide that was a mistake, but that's been the thought process up to this moment. And it was the same process this board used a year ago when you approved the rezoning of the Clay Center and the Dandelion Inn, and years before that on the other side of Main Street with Marble and the childcare facility and so forth.
Mhm.
I don't think you kind of pick your path and you go with it, and doesn't mean you can't revisit and say, we need a course correction. That's certainly within the purview of this group, but we're operating under that thesis that's in effect at this time.
And to add to that, when looking at this site kind of along Main Street, town staff considered whether a parking and traffic study should be required and decided that it wasn't warranted for the application that's being submitted. So that's another reason why you're not seeing it. With that being said, it is fully within your guys' rights to say that we disagree with staff and we think a traffic study should be prepared, and to require that. So.
Okay. Jess, do you have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Just one, the 5-year period, does that also apply to phase 1, or is phase 1 a 2-year? Like, do they have 5 years to do the first phase?
Yes, they could have 5 years to do the first phase per the site plan, but the property, the zoning, the annexation and the zoning will not occur until the phase 1 development plan is acted upon. So
Okay.
there will be a time limit within that annexation that they have to act upon their development plan. Otherwise, the property will be automatically disconnected or not fully connected or
Okay.
to the town. So that's more of the incentive for the phase 1, but
Okay.
Such a good question, Jess. Is there something with the building permit that we could add a condition that the building permit might be applied for within a time period
certainly.
so that doesn't extend to 5 years?
Mhm. Thanks, Jess. Cindy?
I agree with Jeff on the first question on access.
Mike?
Oh, yes, turn your mic on, please.
With access to the Rio Grande, I'm just wondering, I understand you want to go through rafter process, but that would be such ideal access, even like the True Nature to have a gate, even a gate, they close at night to get on into the food court from the trail. I just think people would come with families and walk in instead of going around to Main Street. I do think parking is a concern. I do live right in the middle of town, and on First Friday, the streets, there's no place to park, including my driveway, that people park all over. I know that we have the town lot here, art spaces, we have a big project gonna go in over there, so parking is something that I think will become an issue there. I think it already is, even with the attendance there and with the Clay Center, they have a hard time with it. So I don't know the solution to that, but I do think it should be thought about. And then the other thing from the food courts I've seen, even Moab where I go a lot, the trash, so you have two big bear cans here. And then it says that you're moving it to the commissary. I don't, how, are you gonna have a big dumpster there or how's that being taken care of? I don't
Probably
really-
gonna have several pickups a week.
Right on the front of Main Street, that's where they'll have to pick up. Okay. That was the concern, because I do know, like, the one in Moab, they have a dumpster and everybody uses it for their camping stuff, so. I think that would be a concern too, especially if it was back on the side of the Rio Grande Trail, because then when we're on the trail, we just see the trash cans. Which I don't think is that appealing to the people using the trail.
Yeah, Cindy, I'd like to talk about that a little bit later on as
Okay.
well. Cause yeah, I do have concerns about trash on this too.
Yeah, and then one more
just-
quick thing, thought maybe, I don't know if you considered some solar at all.
Wait, are
on
we in
the roof.
discussion mode now or are we in question mode?
No,
Just-
sorry,
we're
we're
just-
we're
For
just
process.
questions for
More
now.
questions. So did you consider solar at all? Because we're trying to do.
Yeah, there will be some requirement for solar per the green building code.
Mhm.
So it's probably, we'll have to work with the solar person and we'll have to learn more about the roof, but it's probably gonna go on the south facing roof.
Okay, in phase one or is that a phase two?
You have to have
thing?
it for building permit.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Nicholas,
Yeah, only one question at this time. Commissary kitchen, I admit I had to look it up, but not familiar. And in all of my Googling, I'm confused at how this is being, how this would be a commissary kitchen in phase two. Maybe you could help me understand that and how that applies to this project.
The commissary kitchen is basically just a food prep area. So the food trucks would be able to do their food prep. It isn't a kitchen in the sense of stoves and things like that. That takes place within their individual food truck. But all the chopping and preparing that goes into being ready for a day's sales would occur in that larger facility.
So why are we?
Just to
why
to
did they
clarify on
refer to
that, Garfield County requires a commissary for food trucks. They're trying to get away from people using their house for their commissary, basically. And what they require is a 3-bin sink, a mop sink, a hand wash sink. And that's it.
So it's a
So-
shared, it's basically a shared food preparation area. I mean, a commissary kitchen.
It's not so much food prep, but washing
Huh.
their dishes and washing their, cooking utensils and things.
Yeah.
But I think in phase two, we would like to have room for food prep. We'd like to have room for food storage. So it gives us another potential income for renting out that space to food truck operators.
Nicholas, does that answer your question?
I mean, I hear the answer. It's inconsistent with everything I see as far as it being a supermarket for military use. So I guess I'm just a little confused on the definition of how a commissary applies to this. If
That's
it's
just
more of
what
a-
Garfield County calls it.
Got it. That's kind of what I was looking to understand. Okay, so it's more of a local definition that we're applying and a requirement as such.
Yes.
Got it. Thanks.
Nick,
Thanks, Jay. I'd like to thank the applicant and Bob in particular for a terrific presentation. Very informative and very educational. Thank you for that. I only have one question. It's really regarding the sewer and sanitary service. And as I understand it, you have a private sanitary service line that runs from the, what is that? Page east side of the existing house down a diagonal to the manhole in the sidewalk, then it becomes a town sewer.
Yes,
And it's going across, the Clay Center's property.
Mhm.
correct.
Okay, it's currently cast iron, probably existing original.
Paul, maybe you can answer that if you know the material. Are you talking about the service line?
Sorry, yeah, the sanitary service line is what I'm kind of honed in on, not the sewer. Town sewer is completely out of your purview or anybody's purview.
Yes. Our survey picked it up as a cast iron line. The assumption is it's the original service.
Okay. I mean, I'm no expert on sewers or sanitary service, but it seems to me that PVC might be a better option. I know you're trying to push that to phase two. My question to you, to the applicant is it a deal breaker to fix it in phase one?
We would not offer that, but we will do it if required. It's a bigger number than the water. My thinking behind it was the Clay Center is going through a master plan process. Do we let them get through their process and figure out what they're gonna do and then figure out utilities together? I think public works staff is, hey, it doesn't really matter what it is, you need to get it off their property and do it now. I don't know that either one of those points of view is wrong, but I think the condition that's attached in the conditions of approval would require the applicant to do the sewer now.
Okay, so can I follow up with a question for staff, or are we doing this 2 in 1, or is this just questions for the applicant?
We can do questions for staff as well.
Okay, so question for staff, what kind of control or powers or responsibilities do we have to get the Clay Center to help, kick down some money to get this thing fixed now?
None. We cannot condition this approval on the Clay Center becoming a party to this application.
What's the Clay Center's timeline on the master plan?
To be determined. I think they're still at the early stages of any efforts that they may have, and anything beyond just a potential master plan would still involve fundraising and all the other efforts that may be required to physically construct anything. And so, staff's recommendation is largely based on improving the sanitary sewer for the subject property is something that is within the purview of the site plan review, within the purview of the rezoning application, kind of that ability to serve, that adequate facilities are in place. And so we felt that expediting that to phase one would be a better end result for this property's ability to handle its sanitary sewer needs.
Has anybody scoped it? Is it sloping properly? I mean, how operational is it now?
The applicant is proposing to scope it, and if the scoping provides enough information that the existing line is sufficient, then their proposal is to leave it in place. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bob.
Saying it better than I did. So yes, that's the idea, is check it out. If it's, done, then it's done. But if it's okay, keep going until we go to phase two, where the Clay Center future is clear enough that we can size a line that works for everybody and share the cost of that potentially larger line that would accommodate the redevelopment of their property and phase two of this.
Okay, thank you.
Jared, question for you on process for that point. If we include a condition to tie into the town sewer for approval before that work happens, would that be up to the trustees? Like, is there any, I feel like I'm stuck in if we don't know the operative condition of the current line, and we include a condition of approval that it be replaced before that study occurs, will the trustees have an opportunity to require the sewer upgrade as a condition for final approval, or is P and Z the final approver? Is that on our level of site plan approval versus?
Yes, it's on your level, but ultimately what you guys are, your action is going to be a recommendation to the trustees for final action. So
Okay.
any final conditions will be included in a trustee approval ordinance, likely development improvement agreement. And so that will kind of govern those, but certainly your guys' recommendation to include or not include will be considered by the trustees.
But it will be couched in a recommendation. So
Correct.
ultimately the trustees will decide.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
I have a question. Can that condition of approval be contingent on what they find in the scope?
We could make it so that it's to the satisfaction of the Public Works Director, and if he isn't convinced by the information that comes out of the scoping, then we have to do replace the line in a new location.
So we can write that into the conditions of approval on our end.
You could, if that's the way you go, and I would have used the same language, just not as good as what Bob said.
All right, we good on questions? I feel bad for the public's been very patient with us here. Thanks for letting us work through that. I guess, let's open this up to public comment. If anybody would like to make a statement, if you could please come up to the podium or raise your hand on the Zoom call. And we have somebody online
And please state your name, address.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
Steve Zlotnick. I live at 66 North Second Street, which was formerly the Dandelion Inn that you've referenced a couple times here. And I just want to comment, I can't wait for the food truck to open and go over there and get some burritos or whatever you're going to serve and whatever. I'm all for the project, but I have two concerns, both of which you guys have addressed a little bit. But one is the parking issue. And I don't know if you need a whole traffic study or not, but one of the things I did notice just driving by the property is there's no street parking right in front of as soon as you get to the Clay Center, there's places to parallel park. And if the town could create a couple spots right there, maybe make it 15-minute parking, because when I go to a food truck, I'm not usually on a bicycle going down I'm just stopping in for, burrito and a cup of coffee and I'm back in my car. So maybe you could make the parking issue a little bit less if you had a couple little spots for people to drop in. And then the only other thing I'm thinking, and I really appreciate the drawings and what the side of the building is going to look like, and it sounds like it's going to be an improvement. But I do think that as you approve this, you should keep the sort of beautification forefront. Because that's when you come in Catherine's store, this is the first thing you see. And you won't see the side of the building like you do. You'll see the back of a trailer or a food court or a fence or something. And I know, most food courts are fine, but if I'm looking at a propane tank or whatever, or to your point, a dumpster on Main Street isn't gonna help the first thing that people see when they come to town. So find a way to hide the dumpster and make the first thing you see when you come to Carbondale something really good so that they pull over to that 15-minute parking and get a burrito. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Let's see, we can open this up to Regina. Would you like to say a couple words and also please state your address?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
My property is located on 125 Garfield, which is within a few hundred feet of the proposed location. I didn't see anything in the documents about power sources for the food trucks? Will they be run on generators? I'm a little concerned about gas and diesel generators and the noise because a lot of the residents that still live in that area don't have air conditioning. So I open my windows at night, and the last thing I want to hear during the day and at night is generators running. If there aren't going to be generators running, can we put that in the plan promising that generators will not be used? Also, supplies and deliveries regarding the parking issue. There's going to be some, I heard that there's going to be some stable trucks there. How will they get their supplies delivered with the current parking issue? Also, if they're encouraging pedestrian traffic and parking at the lot and walking down the Rio Grande Trail, there's lighting issues. So what are the planned hours for operation? Because there's a large dark swath along the Rio Grande Trail that isn't really conducive for parking and walking to that site. So what are the hours there? Thank you.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to say a couple words?
Yeah, my name is Josh Buckman. I live at 311 Main Street. Just as a coincidence, I also for a long time lived at 82 Main Street, which is directly across the street from it. And I was one of the people who had to call the cops when somebody crashed their car there a few times. But I just want to say, going forward, I like the direction that this proposal goes in terms of expanding Main Street down and bringing new activities, new vibrancy to that half of the downtown area. For a while, it sort of felt like, there's the distillery, occasionally the Clay Center, and pretty much nothing else going on down in that part of town. It looks really weird on First Friday when there's some stuff a long way in the distance and nothing in between. So I just want to speak out in favor of this proposal and adding more activity and doing more development on that end of town. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Wallace. I live at 424 Elk Range Road, Carbondale. I moved here about 2 years ago. I helped do the Rayback Food Truck Park in Boulder. Was a part of that project for quite a bit. Been doing food trucking for 8 years. Traveled around, been to a bunch of food truck parks, kind of see different ways of approaching it. Having something like a commissary on site is like really awesome. When you're getting done with your shift, you can just like do dishes and then you're not hauling stuff all around. Really stoked about this project, and I just wanted to say how much supportive I am of it. And we all need more food options in Carbondale. It's like, so yeah, I just want to say I'm in full support, and I'm here for any questions, comments, or any help guidance that I could give anybody. But yeah, look forward to it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Doesn't,
No.
not looking like it. All right, I guess we could do a motion to close the public comment.
So moved.
All right,
Jay, could I respond to a couple of questions that came up?
sure.
Regina asked about generators, and the only generator that would be there would potentially some backup power in terms of an outage. The individual trucks will not use generators. Deliveries would occur on Main Street. It's the only real practical way to get things to this site. And hours of operation would have to operate within the requirements of the conditional use permit. Nothing between 11:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. is what the town code has in there. And I think those were the,
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I guess let's open this up to the commission.
Where would you like to start, Jane?
Well, let's see. I mean, I guess as for annexations, subdivision, the rezoning, all of that seems really straightforward to me, at least. I mean, it seems like it all makes sense. I mean, we just have a bunch of little tiny lots that just need to be brought together and brought into the town. So I mean, I'm in full support of those items. I guess, can we all at least bite that off and say that we all agree on that?
Yes,
Yes.
agreed.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. Well, then we'll push that one off to the side then.
Yeah.
And so then I guess there's like a couple different things that I feel like we were kind of focusing on this. One of which, so I mean, I guess maybe we just kind of, do we want to work through a couple of these now and just kind of keep trying to break this off in bite-sized chunks so that we can kind of work through all this?
Yeah, help us also stay on track.
Sure. I think that, can we start with utilities, everything we don't see? I do agree with the connections for for each food truck. I think they actually need to have the services provided right there where each vehicle is gonna be parked, so that we can eliminate the use of propane tanks and minimize the number of wires running around. And, if I guess you guys probably aren't having sewer and water run to each food truck, correct? So then, I mean, really just making sure that we don't have a whole bunch of propane tanks and then a whole bunch of power lines running around. Just having service for each unit, I think is pretty important.
And we're just talking about shore power, right? I mean, just AC.
I mean, I believe it'd be hookups for those food trucks. So yeah, I guess if they were running AC or whatever other
Gas stoves.
electrical equipment inside, yes.
That is our plan.
Okay, sure.
Not necessarily propane.
Uh.
That might be difficult to do, but we definitely have hookups for electric. There wasn't enough fall to have gray water because it wouldn't have enough cover
Sure.
to get to the sewer.
Mhm.
So we wanted to offer that, but we just can't do it physically on the site.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
the trucks themselves do operate off of propane for cooking, that there can be restrictions about screening or whatever, but that really is how they in general provide the heat for cooking.
Okay, gotcha. So they will need propane tanks.
They're like self-contained RV style. Yeah, and same with gray water usually.
Yes.
Okay, good to
To
know.
that point, that we probably want to consider maybe some language about those type of apparatuses staying internal to the trucks. Or, just some way, just thinking about that beautification thing was a great comment. Definitely a line of thought that I have. So, I think trash, propane, just those kind of things being contained is probably very important as part of this, or as part of the kind of the utility conversation as well, Jay.
Mhm.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, thank you. And then, I mean, I guess there is just kind of this discussion about the sewer line.
Yeah.
In a way, just knowing, well, so the thing is this is a service for this property and it's running through the neighbor's property. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter what the Clay Center does on their property. In a way, it's almost a hindrance for when they try to redevelop because there's a service. So, I mean, it's mainly just that, it could be pushed down the road until they redevelop. And then, of course, you guys would have to, bring it onto your property then and have it tie into the sewer main. But at the same time, I mean, do we want to see that happen now as opposed to waiting until either phase two or when the Clay Center wants to redevelop, to see that.
I think it's really difficult to hinge it on the Clay Center redevelopment.
I just like that. I think I agree with that, Jeff. After further review of this, I didn't catch it at the time of my comments, or questions rather. It doesn't look like the Clay Center is using that sanitary service. It just happens to be running across the Clay Center's property.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's a totally different story. I don't know that they bear any responsibility whatsoever to pay for anything in that case.
No.
Unless
And I
they
do
chose to tie into it. I don't even know if they have the right to tie into it, but if they happen to somehow find a way to find the right to tie into that sanitary service at a future date.
They're already tied into town service. They're in town and have, I don't think they're connected to that private service at all, right? Correct. Yeah.
We have what's commonly called a prescriptive easement. It's just been there forever and it's kind of like what's there.
So there is an easement for it.
I don't know that there's any written easement.
Nothing needed. Yeah.
Easement, but due to its longevity there is a prescriptive.
Prescriptive meaning that it's not written down anywhere.
Would it not make sense for just kind of good utility design, taking care of one's own, and also allowing the Clay Center and their master planning process to move forward a little cleaner by not having that there anymore, to just take care of this in phase one?
If it needs taken care of, I mean, it doesn't it make sense to use it as long as we possibly can and not replace it until it's needed? I mean, preemptive replacement is wasteful as too.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking of is the impact on the neighboring site. If
Yeah.
that's gonna impact the master plan for the Clay Center, and tearing it up might happen anywhere in the next 5 years, that sounds like an unnecessary burden or a pretty impactful, concept.
But it's an easement.
No,
I'm
it's
not disagreeing. I'm sorry. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Wouldn't you?
Well, I can appreciate that, Nick. I just think that any discussion around the Clay Center's plans is not part of the application and it's not part of this process. I think my opinion, that it's prudent to have this applicant follow the direction from town public works
I agree.
and who knows what happens with the Clay Center, so I think
Yeah.
if this is going to succeed as a project, it's going to need its own sewer service, and it's part of the benefit of being annexed or being part of town,
Yeah.
just not have, well, in Bob's words, like clean it up.
Jared, and sorry, just remind me, did Kevin say that he wanted to see this? Did he say anything about wanting to replace this immediately or?
Yes.
Yes, the staff recommendation is to replace and realign the sanitary sewer onto the subject property in phase one.
Would town have to extend any of their service to the east?
I don't believe so. I believe
The onus is all on the applicant to meet where that manhole cover is currently.
correct.
Got it.
That being said, I do understand why you guys don't want to do it. You're gonna have to rip up a lot of sidewalk. So it is
Well,
an
the plan
expensive
is to
endeavor.
run parallel to the sidewalk.
Not.
Squeeze it right in there.
Sidewalk and the property line,
Mhm.
that's just undeveloped.
Sure.
So hopefully we can squeak it in there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm leaning towards that this is just required for phase one, just because, yeah, I think with the complexity of the potential redevelopment of the neighboring lot. And I mean, if they wanted to redevelop and then they had to shut down your sewer line for multiple days, I know that that's impacting your business as well. And so, I don't know, I think it adds a lot of complexity to this that I think, in my opinion, should be taken care of now. And I don't know how everybody else feels
would
about
agree.
that. Jess, what do you think?
I disagree,
You
but
disagree?
yeah. But I think that I'd want to see what it looks like. If it was in fine shape, I'd leave it. Cause they're not going to, I mean, even when they do it, they're not going to have to dig up the existing sewer line. They're gonna abandon it and tap in on their property and bring it down. So it seems, I want to know what that looks like. I mean, as a builder, I would want to know, I would want to scope it
Mhm.
and not just go in and replace it for no reason.
I guess
As a
the thing
builder
is,
though, Jess, if you were building on a site that had someone else's sanitary line coming through it with an unknown future, how would that impact your decision if the roles were reversed a little bit there?
I still wouldn't, I'd still want to know what it looks like. I'd be a good neighbor.
And we
Is it
want to
gonna be-
work with the Clay Center. It behooves us to, because we also have a electric line that is, the pole is on their property. And if we have to increase the amount of power to our property, they're gonna require a transformer coming down the pole and then have an easement on their property to get to our property, because they want it to be undergrounded.
Mhm.
So we need to work with the Clay Center on that. We want to work with them on this sewer line. Our original costs were out the roof. And we looked at every possible way to cut money on this project to be able to make it feasible. And that was one of them that was a quick and easy $20,000 that we didn't have to do, so.
Mhm.
It would definitely take scoping it out. We'd have to see what the, how, it's currently rented right now and it works. We haven't had any problems with backing up or anything.
Mhm.
So it's working with, two people who live there. It's a lot different than a commercial operation. So, we want to look at it, see if it works.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, then we've talked about lining it, but then we've heard that maybe lining it is as expensive as rerouting it.
Yep.
So we'll have to weigh that out.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd feel confident with whatever Kevin is kind of recommending. I mean, this is an annexation process, and I suppose, through annexation, that is agreement to adequately using the utilities. And, I guess in my personal thought would be to require this, but, I guess, do we want to just go around, Nick and Nick, what do you guys think? Nicholas, you want to start?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I am sorry for the burden, but I do feel like the part of the annexation process is taking care of you around getting things up to snuff. So I think it should be taken care of. As part of phase one.
Nick?
I don't want to incur additional cost on this project. I say scope it first. Part of me, the reason I'm saying that is also because it doesn't look like phase one development is actually on top. I mean, you could do it later and not impact the development or the existing conditions. I say scope it first.
Did you?
I thought the town, I've talked to Kevin a few times, and I thought the town was in the court of trying to slowly replace all these old sewer lines. I know when we built our house, they were like, the old lines, we want to replace them all with PVC. And I just feel like this is the time to do it.
Well, this is
The old
private.
cast iron ones.
This is a private line. It's only sanitary service, not town sewer. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Did I misunderstand?
No, that is correct.
No.
Okay.
See what you're saying there.
Jess, are you still?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then Jarrett, what do you think?
I would like to see it scoped.
Mhm.
But I would also like to see it brought back to us.
Sure. I mean, the thing is this is just a recommendation for the trustees.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can really recommend whatever, and then, they can decide on if they want to continue forward with that or not.
Well, it seems pretty split. My opinion is that this is a pretty significant change of use. And a commercial use with a bar and an eatery, I think it's appropriate to put that burden on the applicant to upgrade the sewer line and connect to town in the annexation process as well.
Mhm.
I mean, if the second phase is adding one other bathroom, I guess you guys abandoned a bathroom in the house in the second phase to do a more, a bigger and more open bathroom. It's gonna be, it's gonna come down the pike at second phase, it seems like too. With the commissary, I'm sure there's some additional risk to a line that's not designed for that kind of commercial use.
So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Sounds like it's kind of 4 and 3. I mean, what do you guys think of just having it as a option, as something on the recommendation to the Board of Trustees? With whatever we move to recommend.
Yeah,
But then at the same time, they'll review it as well.
I think that's fair. I mean, and I'm sure the applicant would be scoping it before going in front of the trustees, and the trustees can decide whether or not they take our recommendation, but
Yeah.
I'd strongly recommend we make a strong recommendation and put the town trustees to the task of considering the additional cost and whether or not it's too high of a bar.
Yeah.
So then does it become a condition of approval?
So right now it's recommended as a condition of your guys' recommendation. We can certainly represent that it was not a unanimous thought on this and that there were some differing opinions. And I think we can represent that to the Board of Trustees adequately and allow them to weigh the different opinions.
Sure. No, I think that, you guys feel good about that? Okay. Well, sweet, that's most of the utilities. I did one down, there we go. The next thing I think this kind of ties in with utilities a little bit is the trash.
Yep.
The trash is currently on that little wing, I guess it's kind of sticking out.
There's
that
2 sites for trash.
There are 2 sites for trash.
There's right by the walk-in cooler.
Yes.
Would you mind if actually on this one, I have a recommendation if I could be so bold, that we zoom out for a second. I think there's actually like beautification and experience in general, I think is maybe a bucket, a little bit more of a macro bucket on this one. I think considering this, talking about it first, understanding that it is our eastern entrance to town. It is that eastern gateway, if you will. And yes, those trash containers right on, I mean, literally at the entry of our town is one component, but I think there are a few other things that could go underneath this as well that have already been brought up, and perhaps a few more. So maybe we could kind of package these things together into this kind of town arrival, beautification, et cetera. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So with that, I think, so some of the big ones, thank you, Bob. The chain link fence, I really appreciate the comments from Nick, your crew on that one. It feels like an inappropriate material at this location, or honestly at any location on Main Street. So I like the softening cedar or something else that's perhaps a little bit more durable even. Something else that I might add into this beyond if we're talking about arrival, we're talking about Main Street experience. I know those street trees are slated for phase 2. I'd like to propose or request that they become part of phase 1. Trees grow slow, and I would love to see that be something that gets installed early and is part of the overall experience, just to really build in, first I want to pause, Matt. Bob, Richard, I think this is actually a really great idea. I am fully in support of this. Aside from a few nuances. So thinking about, I love how the scale of this proposal steps into town. It isn't like we're hit in the face with a big two-story, even aside from the code requesting or looking for that two-story element with or a residential component, I really like how this is a low scale, has a pedestrian quality to it. So I think that's all really great. That said, I think we need to think about this from the perspective of the Rio, perspective of the Eastern Arrival, and just the character of Main Street. How are we continuing that aesthetic? How are we continuing that idea or that character for our town? Or how are we kicking it off, rather, from that eastern side? So fencing, screening, lighting, trees, and garbage are the big items that I think need just a little discussion. And that gate is shown in the top right of that picture there in front of the food truck. I think that goes into the screening and gate or kind of item. I think that gate needs to match as well. There needs to be a consistency in material and quality of that fence or screening element. Or I would like to propose that anyways to the rest of the commission.
Sure.
Am I correct in seeing that the chain link fence is affixed to the deck and the site access gate is a standalone gate? Or is there a fence extending to the west of the gate that will also screen the deck?
Yes.
It will screen the deck and like that outdoor dining space. Okay.
I guess one question for the commission would be, these changes, are these something that we would want to re-see? Or is this something that we would be all right with kind of doing conditions upon that then would get passed along to the trustees?
I think its entry is important enough that it's something that I would want to fully understand. If this is the gateway to our town, and a really cool gateway at that, but just some definition on what folks are arriving to and what that general experience is.
Second that fully.
Yeah, okay.
I think there's some opportunity for art that screens the trucks, like a mural or some way to announce that it's Carbondale without it being like a fence. Even a cedar fence to me is like, I mean, that's like the first thing you see when you pull up to that stop sign. So
There was a resubmittal of, sorry, I interrupted you.
I just think that it's an interesting, like, is there some way to bring Carbondale Arts into this where we can make that something really cool and also screen the trucks and the stuff that you're gonna see in front of the building. And I agree, the chain link fence on the Main Street side seems, there's so many great inexpensive ways to get that look, get like a modern, there's cable railing, there's hog wire, there's yeah. And cedar to me just seems like, you're gonna have to stain it every however many years, and there's gonna be irrigation, and I wouldn't do cedar if it were me, but I like the idea of something different. And I think that wall that you see should be something really cool. Like almost like the wall on El Dorado at Chaco's Park. Like something that speaks to what Carbondale is.
What's proposed in phase one is just an 18-inch high concrete wall. It's not even like a wall that would screen the truck. You like cover the tires of the truck. To the point that I'm hearing, like the entrance of town idea, that east elevation, it would be really interesting and useful to see what you're coming into town, what you're looking at as you're coming into town. Your east elevation is the building elevation, so you kind of get a sense of the architecture. But the truck in your drawing is from the Main Street side. And I think what we're driving into from the Raftalon is whatever truck happens to be there is now the entrance to Carbondale versus something like what Jess is describing. So I think that would be really interesting to see. It feels like a high bar to come back to P&Z because I'm also really excited about this project. I think it's super creative. Probably should have led with like, thanks for bringing such a cool project to Carbondale. And there are some nitpicky details, but one of them is this is how we're going to welcome everybody to town. And
So
Yeah.
spending a lot of time at that site, so as you come across at Snowmass, there's two substantial bases there for the annual sculpture program. Right now, there's one of them occupied and one of them unoccupied. The town has substantial vegetation in the summer that it does that is in that location. As you're coming into town, there's a light pole that we have the banners on all year. You know, part of our marketing is somebody actually sees the food truck and knows that there's a food truck park there. So we'd like to kind of be able to see that that's what it is. And some of them are pretty funky and fun. But the nature of this is a little informal and a little bit of the messy vitality side of the equation. And we hope that will work for you. But that's kind of the nature of the beast on this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I honestly kind of appreciate that. I think that it is kind of it's a kind of a fun way to enter. It's just like, oh, yeah, food trucks. Everybody recognizes that it's going to be food trucks. And usually people are all right with that. I guess, is there any sort of opportunity to, because I mean, some of those food trucks can get, like, some of them are massive. I guess, is there some sort of agreement that, you know, maybe the order of them is maybe bigger ones in the back, and then if there is a smaller one, that the smaller one is parked up front or something like that, just so it's not
the prettiest one, yeah.
the prettiest one, yeah.
I think it's probably going to be practical about how long they're going to be there.
Sure.
The one that's going to be there the shortest time. Some of you may have had On the Hook before, the fish and chips people.
Mhm.
You know, they have a pretty active circuit, and if they were to come here, they would probably only come for a day or two at most. And so it's the nature of the different operators that would have to drive some of that. But you're right, there is a variety of scale among the different types of vehicles. And as far as the condition that's in your packet about from the HPC started this dialogue about having a softer treatment than chain link, which fit in the 70s, but I'm hearing that it may not be today. Perfectly comfortable with that condition of approval that the staff has written up. And focus on the part facing Main Street and soften it up and integrate, like you haven't got to the trash receptacles yet, but integrating that theme into it so that they kind of go together, all of that resonates and makes a lot of sense.
I would just say, like, speaking back to that, where you see the trucks when you come in, I guess my concern is not the trucks, but like the back of a truck where you see stuff stacked by the wheels. So like maybe not a tall something, but something where you only see the top half of the truck. Something that sort of encloses it so that you don't see the, like, whatever's
the bottom, like 3 feet of it.
Yes, yeah, the stuff where you're stacking bins or, you know, I know that's the nature too. You have to have somewhere to put your stuff, so just a 3 or 4 foot something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm heavily influenced by the illustrations and seeing what it would look like as you're driving
Yeah.
through town. I think it'd be really helpful.
Mhm.
A good looking food truck and the marketing story that you're telling, I think is compelling, but it's hard for me to see it. for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
Nick, I see you have your hand raised.
How do I unraise my hand? Let's see. I just want to say that south elevation is it just speaks to me. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I think it's a terrific welcoming committee. I think it is artful in and of itself, but to that point about art and murals, I would much rather kind of consider maybe umbrellas as the art piece, or something that's a little different from just a mural. And really, I mean, the art is the people, and this is just going to be a people magnet in my view.
Totally.
I want to see as much and as many people here all the time. And so that chain link fence, I don't care if it's chain link fence, but what I really care about is the transparency of that fence so that I can see those people back there. I don't want to cover that up. So just to add to that point, I'm not really a huge fan of the cedar fence. That was not me. That was several colleagues of mine on HPC. Just want to put that out there. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
You're not representing HPC as a whole, Nick? Come on.
No.
Can I just touch on the chain link fence? It was kind of a nod to the 70s fence that was in the picture. But we wanted to refine it a little bit, so it was gonna have square posts with angle iron on the top. It's this piece of steel angle iron that came and overlapped that jagged edge at the top. So really, the chain link would just be kind of like a hog fence turned 45. So I think what makes chain link ugly is that bar across the top with that jagged top. And so it was an attempt to kind of clean it up, but keep it funky and groovy.
The south elevation is really important. And we could talk about the trash enclosure. I think that'd be.
I guess just in regards to this east side, I mean, can we just say to the Board of Trustees, or, you know, if you guys come up with any creative ideas on that side, between now and the Board of Trustees meeting, but I mean, do we want to just say to the Board of Trustees that, like, we recommend, like, is there any sort of recommendation that we want to do on that? Or is it, I mean, are we kind of happy with
Is it too much
the
to
way it
ask
is?
for an illustration looking that way?
I mean, I don't know that we have we can recommend to the applicant that they come up with an illustration that tells the story they want to tell as being the entrance to town. I think you could tell a compelling story with a pretty food truck and what that wall looks like. Cause I'm just not getting it from the east elevation that's provided. That's my only point.
I guess my only point is it's hard to put a stamp on something that is the gateway to the town without a clear understanding of what that's going to be.
Sure.
You know, it's an arrival. It's our downtown. We've got one main street.
And from what I understand, like, this isn't in a crazy rush to get through the planning and zoning review, or is this, like, would it be all right for us to extend this out to the next meeting or something, or?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
You guys are in no obligation to make any sort of recommendation tonight. And that's why when we started the information about the annexation, it was more informative, saying that that will be continued. We're thinking maybe March 26th is reasonable, but it could be continued further out. So there's no time constraint that you guys have to take action. With that being said, you know, if you feel that there is additional information that would help you make a decision and a recommendation on this, I would recommend you guys request that. Hearing some of the comments about that east elevation, I think it could be difficult to craft a condition that I think would adequately address what I'm hearing. It sounds more like that's something that you guys would want to see and re-review is what I'm hearing from the commissioners.
I mean, Rich, I know you're plenty capable of producing some beautiful drawings. Would you be able to, are you guys open to kind of presenting at the next meeting, just some drawings of that,
Sure.
of that eastern perspective, I guess.
Yeah, and I totally agree. We want it to look as nice as possible, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so I mean,
appreciate
I think it's mainly just that we want to make sure that that entry is, that it looks good.
And I like the idea of having something solid at the bottom few feet because somebody does have stuff down there. It's hidden from view.
Mhm.
So we can look at some different options.
Okay,
We could do an elevation with, it's basically a property line elevation rather than the building.
Site
Show
elevation.
like the fence, the truck behind, the trash enclosure.
sure. No, I
Trash
think I
is-
think we'd all greatly
Trash is a
appreciate that.
challenge because we don't have an alley and
Right,
it's the hardest thing that I've
yeah.
been grappling with on this site.
Yeah.
Totally. No, I mean, honestly, I appreciate what you guys have come up with because it is a tough site without having alleyway access. I mean, that really eliminates how Jared, how you were talking about, there's no residential there. It's like, well, there's no alleyway access. Like, how do you do any sort of access for parking or anything like that? It's really difficult on this site. I mean, I think this is a great solution for this really funky lot. So I do really appreciate that. Oh, also, I want to mention how somebody, who was it? I think Steve mentioned that an additional parking spot in front. I would say that's not possible because we're too close to the intersection. So I would assume that's why Kevin didn't request anything like that.
I think it was more we
There's already a
recommended
sidewalk.
against it because of the proximity, so.
Right.
Yeah, we directed the applicant. But we
Perfect.
can verify as well.
At one time, there was parking in that location and the town actually moved
Mhm.
the street out.
Yeah, I remember that got brought up with this.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Let's
So
see,
as
I
far
guess
as
is there, what was that, Nick?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Nicholas.
So checking in on that, the trash cans out front, is that, were we touching on that or were we discussing that item?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I might ask the applicants, the two locations for trash. I mean, you feel that the location for trash near Main Street is required to meet your needs, or is there the ability to consolidate the trash back by the walk-in cooler? Instead of having two trash sites.
I
If
think
it-
we, go ahead.
If there's a screening that meets the code, what's the concern if that blends in with I'm just thinking in terms of raw practicality of, we want the trash guys to get in there and get out.
Well, yeah, I think that's my question is like, is the interior trash site going to have to be accessed on those multiple trash days per week? So is the smaller trash enclosure at Main Street solving the problem or solving the issue that you bring up? Does it make sense? I mean, I'm almost wondering if that's the best place to have a trash enclosure, if it's not all consolidated near Main Street, but having trash be pulled out from the interior of the site and across the site. I don't know.
Well, I think we would have a lot of compost. A lot of the plates, the utensils, cups, a lot of that would be compost, so we would have a pretty large compost bin. And then your traditional trash. There may be oil or something we'd have, so there are several different components that could happen on different days. So my thought was that we could bring them out to the enclosure on the street
I see.
on pickup days.
I see.
So that the trash guys can come in and out easily, not have to go through the site.
I guess a consideration, though, I mean, trash is more than a visual problem, right? Especially here in town. I mean, there's an odor. And there's also eventually when critters and other animals learn of it, it'll be kind of become their route. So I guess I'm thinking about more than just a visual enclosure, going back to the main street and entry piece, there's that, there's the smell. And there's more than just that visual enclosure that I think is something we need to kind of flush out.
Right. No, and I mean, also I think that, you know, if this was a square corner with the fence tied in smoothly and everything like that, it would be a lot less noticeable. But given that it's like this little sliver sticking out, I mean, it's pretty obvious, like somebody's gonna look at it and go, what is that? Oh, it's the trash. Like, it's gonna be one of the first things you see when you come up to the site. And I don't know if anybody really wants that, I guess. I don't know I personally think that it would be,
I like the configuration of phase two, like where it's located here.
Mhm.
It's still easy to access for
Mhm.
the utility.
mm,
I don't see a reason why this is not the preferred location. Just extend that.
see, the labeling is trash and,
496, I mean, it's the same.
oh,
thing.
trash, oil, recycle, compost.
Yeah, it's the
Gotcha.
same thing that you got in phase one.
Rich, I know it wouldn't be as efficient as you were hoping. I understand how you like having it there is super easy. But did you consider, you know, if that northeast obtuse corner of the lot, along the Rio there, if the food trucks were to just leave a 36-inch gap and then the trash were to go back in that corner, there, you know, it's kind of splitting it. You know, it's an easy straight line access. It could be pulled in and out. It is, of course, an extra however many feet. I don't see a scale. But it might be a way to get it off Main, but also still have it not be the most challenging to move in and out. But it's also still pretty close to the food trucks. Back in that space.
Staying in the farthest north corner?
Northeast, where that obtuse angle is.
East. Okay.
So it sounds like what
Mhm.
we're coming back with in a couple weeks is a property line elevation and a trash study so far.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down
Solve it
to. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, no, I mean, either, I think if you guys do want to keep, if it comes down to keeping it there, I guess a visual as to like what it would look like, but if we could relocate it.
Put our thinking
think it's
caps
that.
on, we hear what you're saying
Yeah.
and we'll see whether we can make it work.
Perfect. Is that closure for the trash can? Do you guys all agree with that, or
I think it's-
Nicholas, are you?
That sounds great.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, I'd love to see one of Rich's 100 perspectives instead of an elevation, but if an elevation is best we can do, I'll take it.
Are there any, any additional requests to like visual changes, I think that we would want to see for this applicant, I guess? I figure we probably want to, start wrapping this up a little bit, but at the same time, just making sure that we're giving these guys their homework so that when we come to that next meeting, we can just be like, it's looking good, hopefully. Nicholas, did I hear you
Nice to meet you.
chiming up a
Yes,
little bit?
I just wanted to reiterate the request for the street trees in phase one.
Street trees in phase one?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, of course everybody wants to see trees. I guess it's just more a matter of, if we are already requesting the sewer line, then additional trees as well. I mean, just making sure that we're not requesting too much to where we're financially really impacting this phase one, I guess, just to keep things rolling, I guess.
I'm fine with putting in the trees.
You're fine with putting in the trees? Well, there we go.
Two
Thank
trees,
you, Rich.
right?
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
those two
no,
trees.
that's great.
Like you said, they take a long time to grow, so.
Right, no, that's awesome. Okay. Well, sweet. Is there anything else that you guys would want to see studied at all or anything before our next meeting?
Is the applicant okay with the suggestion that the swinging gate is replaced with something that works without blocking the sidewalk? Was that already like discussed and decided, or?
Yeah, we currently have a gate that fits that space.
Mhm.
And it can be retrofitted to be solid or have some kind of treatment on the front. It's basically just a big metal frame.
He's asking about the swing.
So I think we can retrofit it to swing 180, and that's what we talked with
I see.
utilities
I see.
about having it open up so it doesn't block. My thought was that if it blocked the sidewalk, it kind of stops pedestrian
Right.
traffic and allows our truck to get out without.
I
any
kind of agree with
conflict,
that.
but They didn't agree. So we could open it up 180. I don't think that's a problem.
Got it.
A sliding gate I think would be great, but since we already own this one, I would push for being able to do that.
Yeah.
I was just curious, how you guys were responding to the town's request.
Right. That
But
was
I
it.
see
It
your,
would be a
I see your
different
point
hinge
too.
design.
And it's not gonna be open unless there's a truck moving in or out. It's
Right.
gonna be closed.
Mhm.
Okay. I can see it both ways.
Oh, so a pedestrian wouldn't be able to walk in there. You would have to go in through the building to enter the site. Is that, I guess I misunderstood that, or didn't realize that at first. Or would there be a pedestrian portion of that gate available to come in?
No, it's closed.
It's only for truck access.
Mhm.
Got it. Okay. So you must go through the building to get in.
I think you have to go through the building, order 3 beers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
Cool.
I personally don't really have any other things that I want to address.
As a committee member, no. Personally, yeah, I want to see what that looks like.
I had one question about what is it, real estate transfer adjustment, RETA?
The voluntary real estate transfer assessment.
Assessment. Do we have a number on what that 1% is on the sales price that we're asking the current applicant? Like in the spirit of.
$89.50.
So-
$89.50.
The current-
$8,950.
Okay, great. Thanks.
How do you know that? No, I'm just kidding.
It was in the packet. I missed it. Yeah, thanks.
It's all right. There were 1 or 2 words in the packet, so.
Yeah, it was a big one. Thanks. No, that's useful.
Just for clarity, looks like you're about ready to close. We're bringing back, we'll revise the landscape to show the street trees. We're doing a study on trash location, and we're doing an elevation on the east side that includes the trucks.
Mhm.
Really helpful.
And I will say, I do really appreciate that you guys are trying to keep the existing building. And, I do think this is a great little entrance to Carbondale. As Nicholas mentioned, it's a great transition into, whatever else is happening in town in that area.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we have a massive 3-story building that you guys are requesting. This is, I think, a great transition. So.
I think the neighbors are gonna love it. I
Yeah,
mean, they've wanted vitality on that side of town for a long time.
I'm already planning the bike rides with the kids, guys.
Yeah, right?
We're excited.
This is where I'm gonna hang out here.
A nice way to baby step into our core.
And also, thank you for working through us with our roundabout ways of figuring out what exactly we need. So.
It's complex.
Most of the dialogues you've had are ones we've had as well. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's just, there's a lot of balls in the air and you're trying to figure out how to make it work, and you're balancing a lot of different competing interests. And so I understand everything that people are saying.
Sounds like the design process right there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, with that, are we comfortable doing a motion to move the decision to the next meeting, or?
Yeah, my only question would be on the issues that we do have consensus. Is there any benefit to deciding about the subdivision exemption and the annexation tonight? Or if we just continue it all, it's just fine.
We would prefer that you continue it all and make one comprehensive motion at a future meeting date.
Right, thanks.
Sure. Is this open for the next meeting as well, or is this confirmed to be on the next?
So we would request, since it sounds like you guys are wanting to move this conversation on, a continuation of the public hearing to a date certain. So that could be February 22nd, 2024, if you guys feel like you can.
Yeah, that
Make
kind of
some-
pressures you guys with
We have
time.
somebody we can lean on.
Is that a fair ask, I guess?
Do you think you can put it together in that amount of time?
I'll make it happen. Sooner the better.
I mean, I guess, so then to get the information to you guys for the packet, then it would have to be what, by the 16th?
Yeah, it's a week.
Is that, yeah, I guess the question is that enough time?
It'll be enough time.
They want to keep it moving.
Powder isn't that good this weekend.
Their work either.
No, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for working with us on that. Do we have any other items we want to address? You guys on the screens up there, Nick, Nicholas? Good, thumbs up. Cindy, I haven't heard anything from you. You doing okay? Okay.
One comment that was brought up from the public, I thought just a quick touch, just the lighting idea. I don't know if we need to dig into it now. I know we're going a little late here. I just had the note on my pad. And the other one was just a question. Is the lot ADA accessible? Because I mean, currently it looks like pea gravel, which would not be. Rich, would you be open to going to a crusher fines or something that's compactable? It's kind of sub, like a 1/4 minus.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's gonna come down to when we get our building permit, they're gonna probably require us to have a surface that's ADA compliant, and I'm not sure if crusher fine is.
It is.
Depends on the jurisdiction.
But
Not
pea gravel is
Garfield
not.
County.
Because pea gravel can't compact. Like a
Right.
crusher. But anyways, that's all I had. Just wanted to get them out there. Nothing, not too major. And I just wanted to respect the lighting comment that was spoken to earlier.
On the lighting, there's a condition in the series of conditions of approval that requires us to bring in a code compliant, lighting code compliant
Mhm.
lighting plan at the building permit. So that's what we intend to do.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
I think the comment was referring to the raft trail lighting.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think we can do anything about that. It'd be great to have lighting all the way down to the parking lot, but that would
I
be
know.
up to Raft.
Be nice to have that lighting along Rafta along the entire stretch of town, but
Yeah.
can you guys do that for us too? No, I'm just kidding.
You just toss it in, right?
Light the way for bears.
No, we got rid of the streetlights. Why do we put? I guess with that, I'd entertain a motion to continue I guess it's not continuing the public hearing, it's continuing the.
Application.
Continue the public hearing.
Is it continuing the public
The
hearing?
public comment, you guys can choose to open or not open at a
Yep.
future meeting, but it is the public hearing.
Correct.
Make a motion to continue the public hearing
Second.
till February 22nd. Beat me.
Jeff made the motion and Nicholas very quickly seconded. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Great application and we're really, I'm personally really excited to see this go through. So,
Thanks.
and I think
Whoever
that's as a
was-
whole.
Great stuff. Thank you so much.
Originator of this idea, good job.
Good job.
I love that.
John York.
Sorry? Yeah.
Your phone number.
I think staff updates.
Yeah.
Nick, if you were still on board, you might have a update that you want to share. Michonne?
About HPC and me not
Yes.
being part of the crew anymore.
Hold on a second.
We'll just give it a minute. We're fine.
Can y'all meet outside? Thank you.
They're trying to keep going the meeting.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Nick, take it away.
Oh, I served 2 terms at HPC. It was very rewarding. I've got some stuff in my life, good stuff that's taken me away from it. So I'm stepping down from my post. It was a good tour and I learned a heck of a lot. Hopefully I helped a little bit. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. Nick's also been serving as the chair of that commission for at least a few years.
8.
8, the chair the entire time?
Yeah. No, I started out
Most.
as just a commissioner, but it's in good hands. I think, the team that's there they're just terrific and they're gonna do good things. It's a good group of people who are really interested in, somehow preserving the story of Carbondale. Yeah, it's a good committee and a good group. So, yeah.
No, that's great. Well, thank you. I mean, honestly, thank you so much for spearheading that for so long. And yeah, that was a time commitment. So we appreciate you.
And we're fortunate that we still have Kim,
Mhm.
who's on the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission, so she can
Totally.
act as a liaison, if you will, between the two.
That's great.
Um,
Stepping up to chair.
she is stepping up to vice chair.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah. Was she volunteered at a meeting she wasn't attending?
Voluntold.
Voluntold?
Voluntold.
Good, she was there to defend herself.
Nice.
Other than that, we don't really have any other staff updates.
Okay.
We've got a few items, obviously this public hearing and another public hearing at your guys' next meeting for the Ross Montessori preschool. So I think that's about it. I don't know if you guys have anything for us. Anybody know if they will or won't be, more specifically, won't be able to attend the next meeting?
I'll be here.
Magic 8 Ball. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
right.
good.
Should be here.
Fantastic. That's all we have.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
That was a good, productive meeting.
Thank you, guys. That was a great
Thanks, everybody.
The application. Appreciate feedback.